So this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm privileged to host with our partner, The Independent, this high-level dialogue to identify those key security challenges in the world, those key security challenges in Africa, those key security challenges in our individual countries, so that we can be able to position this continent and our countries to survive, but also to prosper. So we are not talking about survival, but we are talking even about thriving, even in the post-COVID and in the post-Ukraine and Russia war. So without taking much of your time, I look forward to very fruitful deliberations, frank, candid, and we have ground rules here. We attack issues, we never attack people, and whatever we discuss here remains here, but it is picked. We are going to have a synthesis of our discussions, and we'll share it with everybody who has participated here physically and on the line, so that policymakers can take our policy recommendations. I thank you for coming, for listening, and participating, and God bless you.
So I've asked Dr. Tugan pick our chief guest. As he does that, I'll just hold for a minute, because I would like Arthur to be back with our chief guest and before Andrew speaks. But I wanted to let the online audience know that please do share the link in case you have a friend or two who would like to be able to join us. But I think on Sunday we were with Dr. Joseph Shivo at the Ministry of Water, and he made an outstanding presentation on what we need to do as a country. First of all, to secure ourselves in matters of agriculture, and how, Israel has stand around the agriculture sector over the decades, and as an example for the rest of us, and what we can do, because a lot of our people, including some of our technocrats, have actually been to the university, the institution, and we expect that there should be some form of turnaround in form of how we manage our land, manage our natural resources, but also change in our mindset. That said, I want to recognize the presence of the different partners, the partners who do work with the Accord in the civil society, who are well represented here, and I want to thank you for joining us, and those who have joined us online. The Honourable Minister, you're most welcome, and we want to thank you, sir, for joining us, and thank you for coming. You only missed Arthur's presentation, but I'm sure Arthur will find an opportune moment at some point to be able to say something. So may I now invite Andrew Mwenda, founder and managing editor of The Independent, to come and make his remarks. Andrew? No, you first. You speak, and then we allow Dr. Shivo to speak. Please come. You must welcome your guests. You invited them.
Our chief guest, the Minister of Security, the Honorable Major General Brigadier Jim Muhwezi. Major General Jim Muhwezi was a brigadier for a very long time, so we added that to his name. It moved from his rank to his name. Him and Otafire. Otafire is Major General. Kanokahindo Otafire, for him is Major General Brigadier Jim Muhwezi. I was invited here to, our chief guest, our chief speaker, our dignitaries, the ambassadors of Rwanda and Tanzania here. I invited guests, my grandchildren present here, ladies and gentlemen. I am supposed to make some remarks after the keynote speaker has spoken on security, and therefore my role at this moment is to welcome the Honorable Major General Brigadier Jim Muhwezi to this conference. Thank you so much for accepting to be a guest of honor at this conference. You are supposed to give opening remarks. I do not know from the moderator. Am I supposed to invite him to give the opening remarks? Okay. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Andrew. Our chief guest, just for introductory purposes, Your Excellency, the ambassadors are here. The High Commissioner of Rwanda is Ambassador Joseph Rutabana, and His Excellency Aziz Mlima from Tanzania, all here. We also have the Honorable General David Muhoozi online. He will be making a presentation on Zoom. He will be joining us. He's already online, but will be making his presentation very, very shortly. So we want to welcome you, or maybe I ask Arthur. Arthur, please come and invite the minister, since he didn't hear you speak. So you must come and invite the minister to speak to us. And request that he stays for Dr. Shivo's presentation.
Yes, he's promised. Thank you very much, moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I've already made my remarks. I will actually wrap them up at the end. But let me say that we are very privileged, Major General Jim Muhwezi, the Minister of Security for Uganda, that you are here to open officially a high-level dialogue on global security, evolving global security and implications for Africa. We think that Africa needs to be ready because of the evolving security challenges and the changing new world order, that if Africa positions itself so well, like I think we positioned ourselves very well at the UN recently when we, the way it was handled, then Africa can be able not only to survive the changing situations, but could take advantage and actually emerge as a global player, as a power, not just an end note, but a major player in international affairs, but also deal with the challenges of poverty, terrorism, and security. So without taking much of our time, it is my single honor to invite you, Minister, to address this gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, the High Commissioners, distinguished leaders of our Accord, my friend Andrew Mwenda, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, my apologies for coming late. I almost failed to come because of what is happening. I was chairing the National Organizing Committee for making arrangements to bury our speaker. So I couldn't rush through that function. So I have to also make a disclaimer and say that I knew about this invitation late. According to Andrew, because I'm not good at monitoring my social media, he sent the message on WhatsApp. But when I got it, it also gave me a wrong date. I thought it was tomorrow, but then suddenly I was told it's today. So that's the background to my coming here. Dialogue on the evolving global security and its implications for Africa. That's a very wide title. I don't know where one starts from. I know it's up to date. But Africa, as you know, its history and security was cannot be removed from our colonial history. So our first interface with the globe was as far back as when the foreigners came and enslaved our people. So security is a wide what can I call it? I will define it as follows. It is a wide concept, but historically security was about preservation of states against foreign aggression, protecting the national territory, integrity, and maintaining the regimes in power. But later on, the definition of security was widened to include threats to physical security of persons, his human rights, as well as direct and indirect threats to livelihoods, human dignity, and well-being. This means that today, besides protecting the state from external aggression, we must also focus critically on human security and social development. Professor Franz Stewart asserts that security and development are intimately linked, and security should be looked at basically in terms of human security, because it is the human being at the center of all social changes and development. Now, security must be about enlargement of our people's choices to lead healthier and fuller lives, void of economic, political, environmental, and crime insecurity. Security is therefore a cornerstone for sustainable development of any country. Overall, national security is the capacity of a country to control those domestic and foreign conditions that the public believes are necessary to enjoy its own self-determination, autonomy, prosperity, and well-being. The global dimension of security began taking prominence after the 9/11 terrorist attack in the USA. So Africa as a continent in the evolving global security, as I said, our colonial history, the first serious and notorious external influence over Africa was experienced during the slave trade. This was followed by the direct colonization of the continent that was completed at the Berlin Conference in 1984, where Africa was divided as a piece of cake among the European powers. Colonization marked the beginning of the underdevelopment of Africa. The colonialists intentionally neglected the industrialization of Africa and only turned African economies into producing raw materials for industries in Europe, where we producing what we do not need, and we consume what we do not produce. This was reinforced by largely a colonial education that focused on literary issues and not on scientific and technological innovation. The colonial government built brutal and anti-people armies whose sole purpose was to enforce obedience to the colonial government by the so-called natives. The neocolonialism and post-independence period of Uganda can be used to look at Africa. The governments that took over after independence were not qualitatively different from the colonial ones. Power was put in the hands of the weak, opportunistic, and unrevolutionary leaders. The colonial distortions of the economy were left intact and transformed when Uganda got independence in 1962. The colonial distortions were inherited. The World Bank continued to play a vital role in the management of the economy. The Federal Constitution, the Independence Constitution, was made in Lancaster House by Britain. It remained a foreign document. The army just changed names from King's African Rifles to Uganda Army. No changes were made in its management structures or aspirations. It remained a colonial army in essence. The social structures established by colonials, that is, education system, the religion, were never changed or restructured. sectarianism based on one's nationality or tribal divisions crystallized. When we got the democracy, the Western democracy, our political parties, of course, because the peasantry society could not be divided other than on tribal and religious grounds, on sectarian grounds. That is what happened in Uganda. Our major political parties, the Uganda People's Congress was for Protestants, the Democratic Party was for Catholics. Kabaka Yeka was for the Baganda. So that's how we were. This kind of situation gave rise to political and military conflicts that emerged immediately after independence. For example, the abrogation of the national constitution, military coup of 1971, ushered in Idi Amin's reign of terror, and the Obote II regime marked by the Bush War of 1981-1986. So when our government came into power, the NRM, we were very much interested in changing the status quo. That's why our major interest was to change the politics of the country. We had a 10-point program. It's a long one, but which is based on 4 principles of patriotism, Pan-Africanism, socio-economic transformation, and democracy. So, presently, of course, the threats have changed. We have terrorism, we have organized crime, we have cyber crime, and so on. But the difference is the same. Still, Africa does not sit with the rest of the world and discuss at par. We continue to live on our own and to suffer from our developed and our former colonial masters. Accelerated political and economic integration of Africa and a deeper reflection on the strategic insurance and security of Africa is one of the possible solutions. The integration of Africa is the only guarantor for the continent's sustainable security, because Africa has no strategic center of gravity. Africa has no insurer of her stability, sovereignty, and survival as an independent continent. None of the 53 countries can guarantee our freedom. They are too small, even when developed. Therefore, I'm saying that we need to encourage integration, regional integration, not Africa, because we can't. I know some of the leaders were proposing that there can be United States of Africa. But Africa is too big, and because of our colonial history, indeed we have different outlooks. It may take a long time. We can do economic integration, but we need political integration of regions. Those, like for example, the East African Federation or Confederation is a possibility. And with the now with the DRC coming on board with almost 200 million people, we can now speak with a bigger voice than we can or we do now in our small enclaves. There are other evils we need to deal with. we have the vice of corruption in all its forms. We need to concentrate on industrialization to resolve the issue of scarcity and poverty and the unemployment of our people. We need to build strong democratic institutions that promote people's rights. We need building an ideologically focused leadership to guide the population. Those are the few remarks I can make, and I'm all ears to listen to our keynote speaker. Perhaps I would have said more if I was going to speak after his presentation. So for me, I have been shooting all over, hoping that that's the intention of what you wanted me to say. But I thank you for inviting me to participate in this important dialogue where we are looking at the global security and its implication on our dear continent of Africa. Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to open the conference. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our chief guest. Honorable Minister, we want to thank you for the opening remarks, and indeed it's a pleasure to have been part of this dialogue, and we request that you stay with us. And indeed, you are welcome to contribute after Dr. Shivo's presentation. I'm sure he would be happy to pick on your contributions to his presentation. We have a couple of presenters who are already with us online, as I mentioned, General David Muhoozi. We also have Dr. Stuart Worsley, who is also going to make a presentation online. He's on the Green Economy Coalition. And also several other partners who are joining us online. I want to now quickly invite our keynote speaker. He's the president of the Galilee International Management Institute. He'll be taking us through the keynote address on the evolving global security and implications for Africa. Our chief guest, Arthur and Andrew, will be watching on the screen here as the rest of us turn to the main screen. So you're most welcome, Joseph. Please come and make your presentation.
I need the instrument. So I come from Israel, and I bring a message of shalom. Shalom to all of you. And it's a pleasure being here, and thank you for inviting me. And I, in line of, can you, oh, here it is, okay. And in line of what was said here by the minister and also Arthur, we have a program that we run at our institute, and it's called National Security. And here we have one of our alumni, National Security, and you can also witness, in fact, Arthur also is one of our alumni, and we don't teach how to shoot in this National Security program. And we don't teach that the importance is the number of soldiers, the number of tanks, but what we teach is really that the national security is economy, the national security is the social structure, the national security is the cohesion of the society. And I think we can see it now in Ukraine, where the Russian soldiers are not so committed. The national security is environment. So the national security is all of this. And I think that this is one of the major conclusion of the present war in the Ukraine. That first of all, economy. That Russia is going to collapse. This is the way I see it, and Putin is going to pay the price. But this I say not as an expert. He introduced me as an expert on global. Nobody knows what will happen. But this is the way. Putin thought that in 1 week, Zelensky, the president, will run away. In fact, the Americans told him, please come. And the soldiers, and in 1 week, they will surrender, and that will be the end. And it's not like this, especially because of economy. So I want to start by, is it working? Nothing. So, okay, we'll give up. When I do this, you move forward, please. I do this, let's try, yes. So please, education is the most important. Who said it? Look at me. No? Go ahead. Nelson Mandela, of course. And I want to tell you, and I said it all 2 days ago, that Israel is 73 years old. Our first prime minister, his name was Ben-Gurion. And one of the first decisions when the country became independent was, this is 73 years ago, 1948, also from the British, like you, that every child must go to school. And if the child is not going to school, the father is going to jail. And he threw some fathers to jail, and then all the kids are going to school until today. And today we enjoy this decision of, also we must, is it working? Oh, here, okay. Thank you. What? Ah, the point there. Okay, look at this. The current accommodation in Africa recommends between 4 to 5% to allocate to education. If we agree that education probably is the most important thing. But if we look at the map, look at Africa. Africa, most of the countries, here Tanzania is red. Tanzania is red, 1%. 1% here. And if we look at the map in the world, Israel is still number 2 in the world in allocating to education, despite the fact that we have security problems. But this is security. Education is part of this security. Now look at, we are talking about Africa. This is the number of universities in the world, in the different continents. Look how sad it is in Africa. The number of universities, and not only that, in all the other continents, the number of universities are growing. In Africa, it's the same level. It's not moving, unfortunately. And by the way, we have a program on management of higher education institutions, and many vice chancellors of universities here, Makerere, the former vice chancellor, and Dumba was our alumni, and Gulu, and even Muni, the lady, I don't remember her name, the tall lady, she's the vice chancellor. They all studied at our institute. Now, look at this, economic impact. We found, this is the International Monetary Fund, because of COVID, the economy is losing 8%. Now, because we invested here, this is Israel, we are only 9 million people. 9 million people, a small country. Here we have 2 ambassadors. You were the ambassador to Israel 5 years. In fact, you can give the lecture after 5 years in Israel. So 9 million people only, but we invested in education, and today, look at this, the Israeli economy is $400 billion, and we don't have oil. Professor Kwesiga, you remember, we don't have oil, we don't have natural resources, diamonds and all those things, but we invested in education. And look at this, compared to Uganda, only 32 billion. Now, I'm not coming here to show off or to say, this is the difference. I come with the message that it is possible. You invest in education, you get to this. Now, look at this. Our GNP is bigger than all our immediate neighbors with their oil. This is the Israeli export, and most of our export is now high-tech. In Uganda, it's only 3.1. In Israel, it's more than $100 billion. And we export high-tech. In the past, we export agricultural. I'll show you afterwards these examples. And here, we are talking one word I must say about health. So Uganda is 3.8 health. the expenditure on health in Israel is 7.5. And one of our, look at the US, 17% of health, but 1/3 of the population is not insured at all. In Israel, it's mandatory. Also health, health is also part of the national security. People are healthy. Health of the society is part of national security. Now I just want to tell you that now we have a new concept on health. Until now, the government is paying for physicians according to the number of patients that they treat. This is the regular thing. Now in Israel we have a new concept. We pay the physicians by the number of healthy patients, patients that do not come to the physician. We want the physician to encourage the patients to do sport, to eat less, to be healthy. And the physicians, it's hard to understand, but the physicians are getting paid by the number of healthy patients. If there is a physician, and he has a community of 10,000 inhabitants, and until now we used to pay him by the number of visits of his patients out of the 10,000, now we are paying him by the number of those who do not come. A new concept. And this concept, by the way, we have this program on primary health care, and one of our alumni was your Minister of Health. And she knows Jane. And she knows this concept, this new concept, and I hope that one day she will implement it here. Last time I was here, this is a group with WHO, Galilee Institute. We have an agreement with World Health Organization. We are trying to influence them all over the world. This is India. All the head of the ministries of health in all the states in India that came, and we are trying. But this is the last thing about health, I think. Also Brazil, this is the Minister of Brazil in the middle there, and we are trying, and the last one is Haiti. Now I come to the main thing, which is climate change. We witnessed the climate change here in Africa, one full degree that it went up, and look at this. We witness desert. Now you can say, of course, Uganda, we don't have a desert, although we have dry or semi-dry in Karamoja. But we don't have desert. So why do you talk about desert? But your neighbors have desert. And already we have problems from Turkana, the end. Here, this is the north of Kenya. In Marsabit, already the governor of Marsabit studied at our institute, and he told me, 40% of the livestock already died. Already died. Now, when farmers, if they cannot grow their crop, they cannot develop their farms, they will move here where they have water. They will move here. We participated in a study of USAID about this place, and here is Lake Victoria. And what will happen if Lake Victoria shrinks? Already there are, look, this is 1960, 1970, you see every 10 years, the red is the number of population around the lake. And today, look, this is 2000, and then 2005. You see more and more people are moving and living, this is 2015, the last one. We have more than 30 million people around the lake. And one of the forecasts is the lake is shrinking. Maybe one day disappear. And why do I say it? Here, this is Lake Chad. Lake Chad in 1972 was the size of Lake Victoria, the size of Israel, 20,000 square kilometers. And today, dry, totally dry. So, can it happen here? Who knows? Now look at this. This is the change in length of growing period all over Africa. And you can see in eastern Uganda is between 50 and 113 fewer days because of climate change. Growing period. Not to mention all those impacts here, Burundi and Rwanda. All those problems of hazards, and we have a program, preparation for disasters. On top of everything, deforestation. Deforestation, you cut trees. And we talked about it with the Ministry of Water. And look at this, in the world, the average is 31% that is covered by trees. Sweden is number 1 with 69. Africa, on the average, 23. Uganda, only 15. You cut trees. Uganda was surrounded by trees, and now it's only 15. Kenya is even worse, 6. And look at this. Not only that you cut trees, but also the trees suffer from climate change. Now maybe we come to the worst problem, the water. The water, here, look at this. This is the water availability all over Africa. And you can see, no, this I cannot show, but where is Uganda here? Uganda is, I think, the 6 or 7 lines. You can see in 1990, this is the long navy, blue navy, no? And then short, about half. Between 1990 to 2025, Uganda lost half of its water. And we look at Tanzania, is even worse. We look at Kenya. Ivory Coast is number 1 up there, also half of the water. All over Africa, we have less and less water. Djibouti, look at Djibouti, the last one. No more water at all. And the question is, what do we do? Here, I visited Tana River in Kenya. This is the governor who studied at our, and he invited me to come. I saw, listen, the water in Tana River is the biggest river in Kenya, and all the water is going to the ocean. And nobody, here the people are shouting, we don't have water, but there is water. And not only that, they are even fighting over water, and there are casualties because of water, but there is water. It's only a matter, and of course, refugees, some of them will come here. And this is Mzima Springs, next to the border with Tanzania, under Kilimanjaro. 90% of the water is going to the ocean. Only 10% is the main source of Mombasa. And Blue Economy 2018 that talked about this water because they realized that this is the problem. Now, please, look at this. This is security. Here, we're talking about Africa, global security. You see, this is the areas at most risk from climate change. You can look at this. We can identify Boko Haram at the northeast of Nigeria, probably because of climate change. We see Darfur. We see Somali with all the problems, Somaliland. We see the Shabab. Along all this, maybe all those problems that we have, terror, we call it religious, but the main thing is climate change, lack of water. And the question is whether or not we have, and there are projects, look, they anticipate that there will be civil war in Africa because of climate change, because of lack of water. And the question is whether or not we can do something. So here I come and I want to give you the solution. And we do it in Israel. We reuse water. 90% of our water is reused. You flush the toilet and the water goes to, and we purify the water. Andrew, you have not been to Israel yet, you told me. We purify the... 2001. Yes. We reuse this water, and of course, we irrigate all our agriculture with those water. In fact, this water, after we reuse the water, it's safe to drink it. But as I said, nobody wants to drink water from sewage. So we have 2 sets of pipes in 2 different colors, but it is safe to drink. So we irrigate our agriculture. And the other day, the state minister of water, she said that here in Uganda, you only irrigate 1% of your agriculture. We are in the 21st century. It's not only that we irrigate, it's digital irrigation. What do I mean by digital? That the amount of water that we give to the plant is according to the needs. So for example, you have a plant, you have a field, so by satellites, the computer will tell you, let's say that this half of the field is more humid than the other one. So here the computer will irrigate more water than on this side. Everything is computerized. But this is the message. If we have it in Israel, we can have it in Uganda. It's not a secret. It's not holy. Here, Israel is number one in the world. 87%, in fact, 90% of our water we reuse. The second one is Spain, only 17. Italy, 8. US, 5. In Europe, the average, only 5%. But this is the solution. Here, all the agriculture in Israel, 90% is, and on top of that, there is a dripping system that also, the dripping system was also developed in Israel, that every plant gets exactly the amount that plant needs. If the plant needs more water than it needs, it's also not good. Less water, of course not. And here, Israel, half of Israel is desert. So now most of the agriculture is going into the desert because if you have water, it's not the desert. Here, look at this. This is cherry tomatoes in the desert. And here, grapes in the desert. And the lemon with no seeds in the desert. Oranges in the desert. Everything is, in fact, here, can you imagine, watermelon and melon, they grow in the air because anyway there is no soil. There are rocks. So here, Turkana, which is your neighbor of Karamoja, it's also desert. They came, the governor of Turkana, Nanok, is our alumni. He sent a group of experts that came and we talked for a month and we had a program on water management and they went back with a plan. Not only that, we have an agreement with the Council of Governors. There are 47 governors in Kenya, so we signed an agreement. Here is Turkana, which is next to Karamoja. Here also, just another example, in Africa, Zimbabwe. The desert of Namibia is moving into Zimbabwe. So here, this is Midland State University in the middle of Zimbabwe, and this is the Vice Chancellor, Mbebe, who studied in our institute. We came there and we designed a program on water management. 9-month program, and of which 6 weeks are in Israel. Here, 6 weeks are in Israel. Here, the president of Liberia came to Galilee. We had, here, I don't remember what I said to her, like this, but she replied like this, also. And we talked about water, and the same with, here, Kano, the biggest state in Nigeria, up north in the Sahara. So we signed an agreement. This is the governor. He invited us in Galilee Institute. We signed an agreement here, Kano State Government with the Galilee International Management Institute, and they sent experts on, we trained them. And the same way here, Kenyatta, Uhuru Kenyatta, the current president until August in Kenya, he came to us and we talked about water management because this is the key. Now, agriculture, of course, Israel is so advanced in agriculture and everything is computerized. I will give you just an example. On dairy, did you know that the Israeli cow is giving 50 liters of milk per day? 50. And there are cows with 70 even. No, a cow is a cow. You think a cow here is different than a cow in Israel? No, what is different is this. Of course, there is something about genetics, but the main thing is management and the nutrition. And the nutrition, everything is computerized nowadays. The computer even goes and get the milk. Here, this is Chuka University in Kenya. This is the vice chancellor who studied our institute. We signed an agreement. He opened a dairy farm in his I think it's Nyeri County, not sure, never mind, in Kenya, and he teaches all the farmers, and he's also selling milk and making money out of it. Here, Samburu also, I will move fast because this is really Kenya. Here, just because we also have research And here, this is Professor Kwesiga. We talked yesterday, we had dinner together, and we are talking about joint research, because research, look, post-harvest. Post-harvest, do you know that 50% of the production of agriculture is lost? Never reaches the market. What kind of loss? And it's not a must. It's not a must, because here, if in Israel we can do it and reduce the loss, we can do it here. It's only a matter of know-how. Here, I don't want to go into all this, but look at this. 1.3 billion tons per year are lost. Even FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, says. But here, for example, cherry tomatoes, that there are long shelf life cherry tomatoes. So if we do it in Israel, we can do it here. As I said, it's not a secret. This is a secret. One of the secrets of Israel is that we allocate 4.5% of our economy to research and development. 4.5%, the highest in the world. Here you can see where the UK is only 1.7, US and so forth. And it's not the government. It's not the government. It's mostly the private managers. When they make profit, they don't take all the money and put it in their pockets. They invest part of the money back in the product. And no wonder when you have so much research that we have Nobel Prize, and so many, look at this, how many companies are based now in Israel. Did you know that the cell phone was developed in Israel? Cell phone, everybody has a cell phone, Here, Microsoft, I go fast, all those companies, they have research centers now in Israel. All those NT and XP that everyone has in his or her computer were developed in Israel. It's a matter, 9 million people, and the decision to invest in education. Tell me if this is not security. Here, look at this. This is the NASDAQ. The companies on the NASDAQ in New York. Israel has 63 companies, high-tech companies. UK only 5. UK, they have, what is it, 60, 70 million people there. India, 3 companies. France, 2. China, nothing. Here, Intel, 40% of the research of Intel is done in Israel. But it's not moving here. Oh, Intel became the biggest, even Apple never had any research center outside the US, now it's in Haifa. I just want to mention space. This is an Israeli satellite, but this is a regular satellite. But I want to show you this one. This is a real satellite that was developed by school kids. School kids developed this satellite and they launched it to orbit. Small. Can you imagine? School kids. And this, imagine, this is one of the engineers in the security, in the army. They developed a missile with a small camera at the tip of the missile, and when you shoot the missile, you can divert the missile, and then the camera takes pictures, and then you can see the target. Now he had an idea. The same idea of a missile with a small camera, you shrink it to a small medical pill. You can swallow the medical pill, and it takes pictures inside. The same idea here. This is the pill inside our stomach with a small camera, and this is the picture that you see inside the camera. So now you want to see inside the camera, you don't have to open like we used to open. Now you take the pill, and here you have a picture. Alternative energy, I don't remember who talked to me. We talked yesterday about alternative energy. Every house in Israel must have, you cannot get a permit if you don't have solar on top. And I look outside, I see the same sun and the same price. Now, can you imagine, there is one city in the south, Be'er Sheva, you know Be'er Sheva, and now 120,000 people, and we developed now Ashalim, it's called Ashalim. These are thousands of mirrors. You'll see the picture, I hope. You see thousands of mirrors, and the mirrors get the energy from the sun, they send it to the tower. The tower, in the tower, here you can see the tower with thousands of degrees, and this generates electricity to the city of 120 people. 120,000 people by this tower. No more oil, you don't need gas, just energy, solar energy. And we have the same sun, we can do it here. Now, Galilee Institute also, as I said, national security, and here we talk about peace. I will not go into this. We were involved here. This is in Rwanda, Ambassador. This is in Rwanda in your peace place. And we contributed to the peace treaty between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Here, this is the president of Ethiopia, President Girma. He came to Galilee. Since we have alumni also in Ethiopia and also in Eritrea, we proposed a peace plan. And the peace plan was that Ethiopia will give up the piece of land that they were fighting over, 20 years. In return, Eritrea will lease for 50 years one of the two ports. There are two ports, Assab and Massawa. One of the ports will give to Ethiopia. I myself, I talked to the Minister of Defense of Eritrea, who was our alumni, Ephraim Sebhat, at that time. And he said, yes. I went and met the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Haile Mariam, at that time. And he also accepted. And they signed the agreement, which is our contribution. So it is possible. It is possible. The only thing is that they gave the Nobel Prize to Ahmed and forgot me at home. But this is life. But look, we are satisfied that we contributed. The same thing in Nigeria. We have alumni. We submitted a peace plan to Boko Haram. You know, Boko Haram for 10 years, exactly 10 years since they started, that they killing, kidnapping, whatever. And so we submitted the peace plan to President Buhari. They will give a piece of land, 10,000 square kilometers in Borno State. And we, Galilee Institute, we are contributing for free the know-how to develop the most advanced agricultural place. They will be a model for all of West Africa. I showed. Even in India, you know, they have pretty much the same problem. You can see that I'm there and Modi, the Prime Minister, is next to me and we signed an agreement because also in India, the population is growing. Can you imagine, in India, they're like here, only 1%, less than 1% is irrigated. Now, many farmers, they take loans, they invest, finally the rain doesn't come, they lose everything. There are 13,000 farmers that commit suicide every year. 13,000. So the government, we're working with the government of India, not only also the federal government, but also the state here, Punjab. This is the Prime Minister of Punjab, or they call it Chief Minister. And we have a program, training program, how to double the agricultural production in 3 years. I will go fast, but it's not moving. Here. Also, China. China, can you imagine? Big China that Arthur wrote about their influence here in Africa, but they come to Galilee to study. And we have an agreement with the government of China, 5-year agreement that already was re-signed. We signed again 3 times, 15 years. In fact, tomorrow morning I have to be on Zoom to open another program in China. Here the Deputy Minister of Science and Technology of China came to Galilee and we signed innovation in agriculture. The last thing is Organization of American States. So it's globally, it's not only here. 34 states of all Latin America and the Caribbean, we have an agreement with them and they learn. Now, what is the main risk for Africa? Is that the population, the farmers, will not be able to continue cultivate their land and they will move to the cities. And if we look at forecasts, so here, look at this. And farmers, we want them to stay where they are, but I want to show you, no, it's going backward, I think. Here, this is what we do. Here we have a program in 8 disciplines that we double the production in 3 years. Double the production only through training. What is this if not security? Here, reducing post-harvest. Not to mention agribusiness, to compete in the world. To compete in the world. You want to export to Europe. You are not the only one who export to Europe. Here, look at this. Flowers. In Valentine's Day 2017, Israel export to Europe, just for this day, 60 million Israeli flowers, just for Valentine. Can't we do it here in Uganda? For sure. But we have to compete. Here, I met with the Prime Minister of Uganda. This was September 2017. I understand he is no longer the Prime Minister. And we signed an agreement with the government of Uganda, Galilee International Management Institute, Israel, for training. But in the 6th year, the Minister of Finance, he signed together with me, and 60 people came, but then they stopped, and then COVID came. But yesterday, I must say, yesterday I had a meeting with someone from the Ministry of Finance, and we hope to resume, and they understand the need for training and the potential. Now, not only that, what is the real threat? Look at this, please. Look at this. This is the world's population in 2100. First of all, the third line, look at Nigeria. Nigeria with 900 million people. Nigeria with 900 million people, already Nigeria today, I don't know if you know, they are the biggest import of wheat, rice, sugar, and fish. Fish. They have the ocean and they still import fish. Because of oil. Everything is because of oil. But with 900 million people, they will not be able to feed all of them. So where do you think they will go? They will try to come where there is water, where there is... And here, one of the countries is here. Now look at Tanzania, 276 million people. This is the real threat. DRC, 260. And the last one, Uganda, 200 million people. Where are you going to put them? 200 million people. Not only that, this is 2,100. You can say 2,000, so far away. But look at this, 2050, also Nigeria is over 400 million. Tanzania over 300 million. Congo over 200 million. This is a threat. Not only that, because the farmers will not continue to cultivate their land, they will move to the cities. So look, the first one is Lagos. Lagos, in the year 2010, there were 10 million people. In 2050, you see the line, there will be 40 million people. 40 million people. How can you move? How can you manage a city of 40 million people? The same with Dar es Salaam. My friend, Dar es Salaam, 20 million people. Here, Nairobi, 15 million people. How can you manage a city? This is a collapse. Isn't that security? This is part of security. Now, as I said, this is my message. It is possible. Here, if we want to grow agriculture, there are 3 ways to grow agriculture. One is land, so there is no more land. The yellow one is to increase agriculture by training, by know-how. And this is the way. So I want to conclude by saying that the first message is it is possible. If we can do it in Israel, we can do it here in Uganda. We can do it also in Tanzania, in Rwanda, and everywhere. It is possible. Let's do it together. And we want to do it. This is our mission. We are doing it for 34 years already. Galilee Institute has been doing it for 34 years. Only here in Uganda, we have, I think, close to 1,000 alumni. Even your Minister of Foreign Affairs, J.J. Odong, I think, is our alumni. Not to mention the mayor of Gulu just finished one of our programs last week and returned. Now we can double the agricultural production, either national or a regional level, maybe Karamoja or places like that. Of course, reuse of water, so important. And it's so easy. It's not a secret. And it's not advanced technology. So we can do it. and preparation for disasters, no question. The World Bank issued a study that usually the damage of a disaster, natural disaster, is $200 million. But if you prepare well, it reduces the damage to 40 million. 40 million compared to 200, if you prepare well. We in Israel, unfortunately, we had to prepare not natural disasters. We don't have hurricanes, but we have our own disasters with our neighbors. So we have man-made disasters, you have natural disasters. Solar energy, of course, especially when you're talking about economic crisis, so with solar energy and professionals, I hope that we will resume this agreement with the government. And the last one is, I want to tell you about, I was very happy to see that we developed a program in South Sudan. South Sudan, a very poor country. We developed a program on digital agriculture for 3,000 students all around the country. The South Sudan has 10 states. So in each state, the government, the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Higher Education identify a study center. We, Galilee, through satellite, we install internet in each of these study centers, and we broadcast from Israel 3,000 students. Now, please listen carefully. We are committed to employ 10% of these students, 10%, at least 10%, in Israel. When they finish their studies, they will work in Israeli high-tech firms. They will work online. Online. I can tell you about another example in Georgia, that there was a group of 1,000 students that study computers. And at the end of the program, all of them, all the 1,000 are working in Israeli companies, online. This is a new world today. Online, they can work online. And I talked even to Apple. Apple in Israel, they are willing to hire those who will finish this program in South Sudan. We can do the same thing here. So this is my message. Thank you very much.
Surely we could do better than that. Dr. Shivo, and I also know that the online audience, I'm told, are clapping, but we just can't hear them. So we want to thank you, Doctor, for your presentation. I wanted the technical team to line up General David Mozi, online team. If we could get General. General, we want to come to you in the next 30 seconds because you're the discussant onto this keynote address. So General David, if you can hear me and say something, so we are able to know that you can hear us and we can also hear you. General?
Yes, Maurice, how are you doing?
Oh,
can
perfect.
Hear you.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. So we want to turn to you. And General, it's very easy to deal with you when you're not here in person, because I would have found it difficult to stop you from speaking. With technology, I'll mute you on this side. So, General, apologies if I mute you, but I'm sure you will keep within the time. Over to you, General.
Thank you, Maurice. Conveners of the dialogue, Honorable Jim, the chief guest, the keynote speaker, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm honored to join this important conversation about global implications on security. I want to thank those who set the pace, including my grandfather or son, like he describes himself, Andrew Mwenda. I'll give a broad brush of, in response to the keynote speaker, starting with the international system, because I think context matters, and I'll do this by way of questions. Number one, is it a multipolar world? Is it a collaborative world? Is it anarchy and self-interest based? Are we looking at vestiges of the bipolar world of yesteryears, or are we looking at all these? From that perspective, I want to go to security, and I'm glad the previous speakers have already hinted on security in broad terms, beyond traditional state security, and not merely absence of war and peace, but human security, security from want, need, and danger, etc., which all have an ultimate effect on state security. And this includes what the keynote speaker dwelt on: food security, water security, energy security, the environment, employment, health, among others. All these are highly securitized subjects. And we look at this within the lenses of national interest and aggregate both state interests and the people's interests. We look also at international behavior and its effect on Africa, globalization especially, its effects, and then of course, the unintended consequences of the actions of international players. Or are they unintended? Some people say they are intended. And the choices that we make out of these consequences. The keynote speaker has been candid. He's dwelt at length on all these, and I can't agree more. Resource crunch, diseases, epidemics without borders. Usually have the idea of doctors without borders, but now we also have diseases without borders, poverty, unemployment, refugees and migrants, environmental degradation, the costs of oil and gas fluctuation, and the effect on global commodity supply chains, population trends, advantages and challenges, sustainable and inclusive development issues, and unfair global trade terms. What does this mean for Africa? I'll single out the myth of sovereignty. As we know it, that it's inviolable, it should be indivisible, ideally, but is it the case? Take the example of COVID recently and its effects, starting from one corner of the world and affecting the whole world. And in its wake, we have shaken economies, and we are trying to recover. Then Ukraine the other day. So we need to have a relook at the idea of sovereignty. The prevalence of issues of preventive and preemptive war outside the terms of the UN Charter. Lessons for Africa, I think we need to look at alternatives. The keynote speaker was emphatic. We need to look at import substitution, not just through talk, but action. We need to invest in technology, in science, in innovation. And of course, education. Relevance, connection to industry and to employment. Agriculture, I can't agree more. He was candid on how we can improve our agriculture, given that we are in the advantage corridor. We have rains, we have good soils, but are they forever? So we should stop sloganeering and improve agriculture when the time still allows. Water use, very, very important subject, water security, and he has been candid about that one. Reuse, water harvesting, even before you go into reuse. Are we tapping all the sources of water and conserving water for today and tomorrow? Energy security, investment in renewable energy sources, solar, wind, gas, which is the ideal mix for Africa because we have plenty of these. Environmental security, how do we, and we must, roll back degradation, tree cover, wood fuel is untenable. Wetlands, the keynote speaker missed that one, and its effect on our water bodies. Waste of water, plastic use, land use. We have a challenge of land fragmentation, and it has an effect on the environment. Education, formal education and informal, on how to conserve our environment. And then, of course, maybe we need to look at a regime of reward, but also sanctions to ensure compliance with preserving our environment. Could we think of watch teams or vigilance? I think we need to be innovative as far as this subject is concerned, but we need the buy-in of the population because sanctions alone can't work. Deeper collaboration, General Jim talked about it, integration, I can't agree more. This has by elite non-complementarity. So we need to go further than where we are to realize the benefits of collaboration. And then, of course, last, enabling policies, because just talk doesn't help. We need to go beyond talking and ensure that we do actions that can ensure that our countries, our continent is secure, not just now, but in future from the shocks of global action. That said, there are benefits in globalization, so we need to promote those ones, but also we need to mitigate the effects of that connection where they come, like these issues I've talked about, COVID, the conflict in Ukraine. And that's why I applaud the position of Uganda of abstention, because by abstention we give chance to dialogue, especially between the protagonists, so that we mitigate the effects of that conflict on the world, including on Uganda and on Africa. Thank you. Those were my brief remarks in response to the keynote speaker.
Thank you very much, General, and I know you've been with us since 2 p.m. If you can, please do stay with us in case we want to come back to you, but do also let us know when it's not possible, so we are able to get back to you much later. I want to invite Andrew. Andrew has also another engagement, but I want to invite Andrew before I go to Stuart, so I want the online team to line up Stuart, but before that I want to invite Andrew. As you had said, you wanted to have a rebuttal of the presentation, and you've had a chance to also listen to General David. Unfortunately, you will miss the other General, Jim, when he also makes his contribution to this presentation.
Thank you very much, Maurice. Again, our chief guest, all our speakers, all protocol observed. First, I don't have a rebuttal for anyone. Since you are speaking about the evolving global security order and its implications for Africa, I just wanted to give my personal reflections on what I think the global security situation is going to look like. So for me to go into that, I want to begin with the preliminary remarks on what I would call international relations 101. If you went to study a class of international relations, the first thing you learn. One, the international system is characterized largely by the main actors in the international system are states. Of course, there are organizations, NGOs, and terrorist organizations, but you can say the main actors in international relations are largely states. And the biggest motive of states, the biggest aim of every state is to survive, because any state that cannot survive cannot perform any of its functions. The problem is that in the international system, there is no higher authority above states. If I punched my grandson Arthur here, he can report me to the police for assault and I will be arrested. But if America bombed you, there is no international police you can call to come to your rescue. The United Nations doesn't have an army. So because of this fear, because of this situation, states actually in the international system live in fear. And because of that fear, they tend to develop particular military capabilities as an insurance in case you live next to a neighbor with aggressive designs and intentions against you. The other dilemma that faces states in the international system is that it is difficult to know the intentions of your neighbors and the neighbors around you. It is easy for you to know the capabilities, but difficult to discern intentions. In any case, even if you are able to discern the intentions of your neighbor today, you are not sure that tomorrow those intentions will remain the same. Just imagine any one of you here. Let me pick this young man. I am sure you're worth maybe $500,000. Assuming I gave you $20 million today, that changes your capabilities and it may also change your attitude. So states are always in that constant situation. They can see capabilities, they cannot discern intentions, and even if they discern intentions today, they are not sure what the intentions of their neighbors can be tomorrow. So this, we call it a system of anarchy, and anarchy in international relations does not mean chaos. It means lack of hierarchy. Now, on that basis, let me come to the most immediate global security in the political sphere. Of course, we have discussed environmental security or climate security. We can discuss economic security and food security and other forms of security. I want to discuss political security. The current political problem facing the world and can lead to nuclear annihilation is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Given the principles I have stated of international relations, just imagine yourself Russia, a very big power armed with nuclear weapons. The last thing you want is a hostile military association or organization called NATO next to your doorstep. Remember in 1962, the Russians planted nuclear missiles in Cuba, and President Kennedy said, put a naval blockade around Cuba and said, we'll bomb this island out of existence unless Russia remove those nuclear weapons. So he sent his brother Robert Kennedy at night, met Anatoly Dubček, the former Russian ambassador, Soviet ambassador to Washington, and they negotiated a deal where Russia agreed to withdraw the missiles from Cuba, and America in return would remove the missiles from Turkey. So global powers cannot allow another big power to come and lodge military forces on their doorstep. So what we are seeing today, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and this is what I think motivated it, I think the Americans have two plans. The Americans know they cannot invade Russia directly because it has nuclear weapons. It will annihilate America, and America will annihilate Russia in what they call MAD, mutual assured destruction. So since they're capable of destroying each other, there is a British geographer called Harford, you should write his name and go and search him, Harford John Mackinder. In 1904, he wrote a paper where he was arguing that geography determines world power. He said that whoever rules Eastern Europe, especially Russian Europe, will control the heartland, and whoever rules the heartland will control the world's island, meaning Eurasia. Europe and Asia are one continent, are really one landmass. And whoever rules the world island will control the world. So British foreign policy in the 19th and 20th century was precisely to contain Russia, to build a system of alliances to cripple the ability of Russia to utilize its strategic geographic location to become a world hegemon. After the Second World War, it became American policy to contain the Soviet Union because of that specific geographic location. And I think after the Cold War, it is American policy to weaken Russia. I don't think the United States, as the most powerful nation in the world, would want another powerful nation in that part of Eastern Europe, Russian Europe, to become very strong. The problem why Americans demonize Putin is that Putin has actually rebuilt Russia from a country that had almost collapsed to a very powerful nation militarily and economically. Now, if you're an American strategist and you want to weaken Russia, what do? In geopolitics, there is a concept we call bite and bleed. If you can't fight an enemy directly, it's important to give him bait, draw him into a long, costly and protracted conflict. Once he's tied there, he will emerge weakened. America was weakened by the Vietnam War and has been weakened by these wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, although they were on a small scale. So it's important for America to draw Russia into a conflict in Ukraine. Then it can arm and support Ukrainian nationalists to ensure that Russia emerges from this conflict with crippling sanctions, and you have economic sanctions on one hand, a war fight on the other that is long and costly, and then you come out exhausted. Of course, it's another aim of the United States that we should look at. The United States, when no country can become a global hegemon, but countries aim to become regional hegemons. Like America is a hegemon in the Western Hemisphere. There is no power that can challenge it in the Western Hemisphere. Once you are safe in your own region, then you are free to roam around. You are in Iraq, you are in Afghanistan, you are everywhere. I think that Russia was beginning to become comfortable in its own region, so we saw it roaming around, throwing its weight in Syria, Libya, and Central African Republic. So if you're America, it's better to create a crisis for Russia right near its border. It enters a war there so that it can stop roaming around the world. And I think those are the two aims. So what are the implications of this on global security? I should tell you, I am deeply worried. I'm a student of history and especially a student of war. There are two books I would recommend everyone to read. If you cannot read them, I will come with my stick next week and beat all of you. And these books, one is by Barbara Tuchman. It's called Guns of August. The other is by Christopher Clark. It's called Sleepwalkers. It's about the First World War. The lesson you learn from these books is that wars can break out even when leaders on either side are committed to avoiding them. But once the military momentum is started, it's sometimes very difficult to stop it. Because leaders, when you escalate a situation, leaders may face a very difficult choice of backing down and looking weak, or stand their ground and look tough. And you can see how Zelensky is acting. He's trying to act tough, even though he knows, or at least should know, that Russia will destroy his country. Russia can take a heavy cost of economic sanctions, but will destroy both the state and the society of Ukraine, because NATO integrating Ukraine into NATO is a red line for Russia. And countries, when they are faced with the problem of survival, they can go to any length. They can suffer the worst economic sanctions. You have seen Cuba, Iran, North Korea, they have suffered sanctions for 500 years, and they're still standing. And even those regimes have not fallen. In fact, the lesson you learn from sanctions, they don't bring down governments. Those who think that Putin can fall, it's unlikely. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. But the risk is this. I have seen Russian missiles fall within 8 or 12 kilometers of the Polish border. Let us assume that they fell 8 kilometers inside Poland, and just a small miscalculation on a computer when they are sending a cruise missile, and it falls in the side of Poland, it means that Russia has bombed a NATO country. What should NATO countries do? They have Article 5, which says they should come to mutual defense. So let us assume that the NATO leaders think that let us make a simple conventional response by shooting some Russian planes. Russia cannot match NATO in terms of conventional military capabilities. So if they shoot at Russia, Russia's first aim may be, I need to deter these guys by using small tactical nuclear weapons, and I hit maybe Latvia or Estonia. If it escalates the situation, what will an American president do? He may say, okay, I will also take out certain launching sites of Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles in order to give Putin a signal, don't move. The problem is that Putin may read the wrong signal, is that you're going to annihilate him, and he may launch a comprehensive nuclear assault on the United States. And in such a situation, it's very difficult to negotiate stopping the war. So right now, any small thing like this, just like this, can go wrong in Ukraine. And me and you, including Africa, will not survive. Remember, Russia has, I think, 7,600 nuclear warheads. America has about 7,000 nuclear warheads. They can destroy this world 7 times over. Those of you who know about the Tsar bomb, the Tsar bomb has a detonation capability of 3,800 atomic bombs that were dropped at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Did you know that? The most powerful nuclear weapon in the world is in Russia. It's called the Tsar bomb. Its detonation capacity is get the atomic bomb that was dropped at Nagasaki, multiply it by not 3.8, not 38, not 380, but 3,800 times, just one bomb. So if you throw it on New York, I don't know what would remain in the East Coast of America. So this is the one thing that we need to avoid, a miscalculation leading to an escalation, and an escalation that cannot be stopped. Yet I personally think that the biggest challenge for the United States is not Russia, because I think Russia doesn't have the population, the economic resources, the technological know-how to be a serious peer competitor to the United States. It's China. China's economy, China's population, and China's innovations in technology over the next, in the short term, I say 15, 20 years, medium term, 50 years, over the next 70 years, long term, 100 years. China is, if it sustains its current rate of growth, it will become a giant Hong Kong and become a serious threat to the United States. So of course, if I was the American president, so sad I am not, that's why the world is in serious trouble, I would be interested in making Russia my ally, because in any future confrontation between the United States and China, I would like, if I was an American president, I would want Russia to be on my side. It does not pay me to antagonize Russia at this time. And I think that part of the problem of the United States is what I would call it's liberal delusions. There is something in the Western world. Some Western countries believe that wars are caused by internal characteristics of states. That if you have non-democratic, authoritarian, despotic states, their leaders are always psychopaths, and it's very difficult to avoid war. So if you spread democracy across the whole world and all of us become liberal democracies, of course, we will begin kissing and hugging each other and it will be all love ever after. I honestly consider this one of the biggest religious beliefs that has ever existed. It's bigger than Islam and Christianity. First of all, you cannot expect every country in the world to become a liberal democracy because we have different cultures, different histories, different politics, different so many things. So to ask all of us to be liberal democracies is an impossibility. That is one. The second thing is that if you look at the elements I started with, and I think these are the bedrock of international security, it's important for countries to recognize each other's interests. I may not like you, but if I can understand what your interests are and listen to them, and you also listen to my interests, we can easily negotiate an understanding. One of the difficulties of building an understanding between the West and Russia is that the West is saying, this is a dictatorship oppressing its own people that must be ended. They want a particular form of government in Russia of their choosing. And that becomes very difficult to build an understanding. During the Cold War, the Americans did not seek to change the system in Russia. They engaged the Soviet Union as it was, not as how they wanted it to be. And one of the reasons why the peace was held is because the Americans did not seek to impose their values on the Russians or on the Soviet Union. Today, the attempt to force a particular form of government in Russia and China, which is what we call liberal hegemony, is the biggest threat to world peace. And Africa, now I want to conclude, Africa cannot avoid getting affected by this confrontation. Let me give you an example. You are China. China is the largest trading nation in the world, the largest importer, the largest exporter. For China to sustain her current manufacturing, it needs to import large volumes of raw materials into its factories, and it needs to export, to ship a lot of its products to the world market. Two things. China therefore needs freedom of the seas to move around. Two, it also needs to exercise influence in areas where it gets raw materials and where it sells its products. Isn't that obvious? You don't want a market you have no influence in, whether that market is for raw materials or where you sell your products. Now, put yourself in the shoes of China. America is the global power that controls the oceans. If I am China, assuming America has just embargoed Russia, it has always even frozen Russian assets, what should I expect in the future? What if America one time closed the oceans? I am dead. So I must build a blue water navy to patrol the seas and ensure that my goods are delivered and my materials are brought. It's an imperative on the government of China. Now, if China begins building a heavy navy, what will be America's attitude? So remember, America is incapable of entering the minds of the Chinese. The American government will say, look, these Chinese are trying to build a navy in order to chase us out of the oceans. You see how you read intentions. So the Americans will not want the Chinese to build a strong navy to patrol the oceans which they patrol. And if China builds one, they will see it as an offensive. China is building it purely for defensive purposes. America may see it in offensive terms. And there, conflicts will emerge. And I think that the international system is always filled with the risk of such miscalculations. And of course, I don't see how, unless the Americans accept the Chinese system as is, the relations between America and China will remain well. If they continue insisting that China has to become a liberal democracy, that China has to be Americanized and Europeanized for it to be a responsible actor on the international scene, that again will be the source of conflict. China has a civilization of more than 2,000 or 3,000 years. Let me say more than 3,000 years. It has existed as a continuous state for all those years. America has only, it will make 250 years in 2026. Am I correct? 2026 is 250 years. Just imagine a kid of me, I'm an old man of 109 years. Just imagine my great-grandson, Maurice here, who is just turned 22, coming and telling me that he knows how I should lead my life. How are we going to get along? Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And if you want to probably stay here until the cows come home, is engage Andrew in geopolitics and international politics. And I'm glad you cut yourself short. I had written a note, 1 minute left, and I'm glad I didn't have to come to the front. As we spoke, I did want to recognize the presence of the representative of the Netherlands Embassy, who is here with us. So we want to thank you. She came with a colleague. They are representing the ambassador from Netherlands. I want to now turn to Stuart Worsley, the country's director, Green Economy Coalition. As we spoke, and I think Dr. Shivo spoke to the issues of climate change and the threats the world will be facing if we don't deal with climate change. And he will take us through the transition to a green economy and the implications for development in Africa. Stuart, if you can hear me, you want to say hello to us, Stuart?
Good afternoon. Can you give me a wave if you can hear me fine?
We can hear you, and I'll allow the team to let you know that we can hear you loud and clear. All right?
Lovely.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister of Security, Minister of Internal Affairs, Netherlands Ambassador, Permanent Secretary, Arthur Bynum-Magisha, all guests, all protocols observed. It's a real privilege for me to be here with you today. I've listened with great interest to the presentations made, and I want to change pace a little bit, if I may, and I want to talk about transition through green approaches. So I'm going to share my screen, and if you could give me confirmation that you can now see my slides. Could somebody, I can't see the room, so if somebody could just indicate that you've got that, I would be grateful.
Now we have, yes, we have.
Thank you. So I want to talk about transition to a green economy and its implications for development in Africa. Addressing socio-economic and political and security challenges. I just have to figure, yes, here we go. First of all, I want to frame the debate. I think I want to start with a quick definition of what I want to talk about when I talk about security. And security I'm seeing here is freedom from danger and threat. So that means we've got enough food, got enough water, got enough clean air for all, got a healthy bioenvironment, we've got good soil, we've got biodiversity, pollutants are managed, we've got a climate that is supportive of us, and we've got a stable society. Fair human well-being prevails. That's what I mean by security. Now, for that to happen, we need to have a healthy environment. It's essential to our long-term security. Because if you have an unhealthy environment, it begins to leverage other economic challenges to create multiple threats. I think one only needs to look at the way that climate change affects soil fertility and causes conflict. And you can see examples of that, for example, in neighboring Somalia. And it's true to say that areas of drought correlate with low intensity conflict. So what is this green economy then that we're talking about? Well, first of all, it's a means to ensure sustainable prosperity for everyone. It's a means to build social, environment, and climatic stability. And note, I say social as well as environment, climate. And it's got to be equal. It's got to be fair. This, surely, is the bedrock of security. So what is this green economy that I talk of? We say at the Green Economy Coalition, for whom I work, and of whom a code is our member in Uganda, the green economy is one which enables all people to enjoy and create prosperity. It promotes equity within generations and between generations. It safeguards and it restores and it invests in nature, the bedrock on which our lives stand. It supports sustainable consumption. It supports sustainable production. And it's guided by integrated, accountable and resilient institutions. Ultimately, such a green economy is based upon a social contract, a relationship between government and people, which gives ordinary citizens a say in what happens in their name. And it elevates environmental sustainability above that of financial profit. So why do we need a green economy? Well, right now, I think it's fairly clear. We are facing across the world multiple serious interconnected challenges. Climate change is getting faster. We've got 10 years to avoid going global temperatures getting above 1.5 degrees. Nature is in crisis. Biodiversity extinction is happening at an alarming rate. 75% of the Earth's surface is substantially degraded. Inequality is growing everywhere. We've heard in previous speakers of inequality between nations. We also have inequality within nations. The poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer. And democracy is under threat. Reactionary nationalistic policies, we've heard examples of that recently. I won't repeat those, but it's undermining global cooperation and it's undermining our capability as a species, as a people, to deal with climate change and environmental destruction. Now, if you're going to take this point of view, you have to recognize that none of these issues can be tackled alone. They are all interconnected. Our systems, however, the rules through which we live that govern our economies are fundamentally broken. Right now, our economies incentivize overconsumption. They incentivize competitiveness. They incentivize increasing inequality. They incentivize mechanisms to destroy nature, and they incentivize the acceleration of climate change. So we would argue at the Green Economy Coalition, we need a new social contract that gives ordinary citizens a say in the decisions that are being made in their name. Now, there's 5 policy themes that we work on. On the right-hand side of the screen, you should see a little picture of a planet. And I'm going to start with the bottom and move upwards. Because at the bottom is nature. We need a set of policies that ensures that governments and businesses understand that healthy forests, soils, and rivers are the bedrock of all economic prosperity. There is no sustainability on a dead planet. Above that are people. If people do not gain from a green economy, it just won't happen. So the green must be fair. We need to ensure a just transition, particularly for poor people, informal workers, and marginalized communities. Our current economic systems have left too many people too far behind, and it is creating tensions which give rise to insecurity. We need to work on sectors. We need to work quickly to green our sectors, to transform our food, to transform our energy, to modify our transportation and infrastructure mechanisms. We need to work on financial mechanisms that diversify capital markets to invest in other things, to invest in things that matter. And we need to have a governance structure which rewires our institutions, rewires the metrics of performance, so that we're no longer blind to the environment. We're no longer blind to social inequality. It's no longer just about growth. It's no longer just about GDP, but it's about everything underneath: the nature, the people, the sectors, and the finance. Africa has got some particular challenges today. We've got land degradation, we've got deforestation, we've got biodiversity loss, and we've got extreme vulnerability to climate change. This is UNEP's top 4 on the list as stated for Africa. And we are seeing, as a consequence of this, and not just in the last few years, but for the last 20 to 30 years, we're seeing drought, we're seeing humanitarian crisis, and we're seeing water pollution. And this is leading to insecurity as people struggle for their very lives. Yet, we are in a continent with amazing opportunities. Winston Churchill once called Uganda the pearl of Africa, and I believe him. But Africa as a whole continent has got amazing potential. 70% of our population across sub-Saharan Africa are under 30 years old. We've got 30% of the world's mineral reserves. We've got chromium, we've got platinum, we've got arable land. We've got 10% of the internal renewable freshwater sources. We have stuff that we can build on. In most African countries, 30% to 50% of total wealth is based in nature. Over 70% of people in sub-Saharan Africa depend on their forests and woodlands for their livelihoods. Land is a massive asset, and a lot of this asset is being lost through illegal activities. The stream of benefits that we are gaining as a continent from these resources is declining over time. And one figure to put here is that Africa is losing an estimated $195 billion worth of natural capital through illicit financial flows, illegal mining, logging, trade in wildlife, unregulated fishing, and environmental degradation and loss. The flow out is massive. So the time for intervention is now. On a planetary level, we know that the science is clear. We need to do something quickly to stop environmental change and climate change. We know that the economic metrics are no longer fit for purpose. And COVID, that event that has recently hit us all, has blown away decades of economic orthodoxy, creating new space for genuine change. We are seeing support for action growing across the world, from school children to central bankers. People are asking for change. So a green economy requires a fundamental shift in the way that we think, in the way that governments prioritize and position social and environmental goals above financial ones. This is necessary, but realizing it is not enough. We need to take action to move towards this. If we do not take action on the environment, the achievement of sustainable development goals will not happen. And economic and environmental and climate and social challenges will continue and intensify. So I just want to talk a little bit about the economic paradigm. Our economies are self-perpetuating ideological systems which reinforce and stabilize one another. It creates a lock-in effect. It creates that one thing leads to another and we don't seem to be able to escape. And we need to open up this system through a process of transformative change. And what we therefore propose as a coalition is a multi-level approach that intervenes across society to offer alternatives to the prevailing paradigm. Build demand for a just transition, shape institutions and policies that are needed to deliver change. So what we do at the coalition is to bring together organizations, institutions, people with multiple perspectives and a wide range of expertise. We do not pretend that as the Secretariat, we have the corner on the truth. But what we would argue is together collectively with the people of civil society, of business, of government, of institutions across the world, together we can develop that truth. And there's a couple of things that we need to do. The first is to build sustained public demand, to drive political priorities over the long term in ways that hold decision makers to account. This will change the values, structures, and behaviors that lock our economy. There are two fundamental objectives that we have. One relates to people, the amplification of social demand for systemic economic reform. And secondly, is the supply of policies that work. On the left-hand side here, we have indigenous knowledge and momentum. Ugandan people and Ugandan institutions and Ugandan businesses have the knowledge, they have the will, they have the momentum, they have the desire for the change in Uganda. Flip side is we need policies that enable that to work. So what the Green Economy Coalition does is we try to bridge the people-policy divide. It's a complex process. It requires adaptability, diversity, and responsiveness, and it requires a broad social demand for change. Society will either react positively to policies we make, or they won't, and they will resist them. If we impose policies and say, this is what we must do, and people don't buy into it, it won't work because people will resist. They will see it as irrelevant. They will see it as unimportant. So getting this tango, this dance between people and demand and policies that work is absolutely critical. And policies that are not informed by the realities or diversity of people's lives are therefore much less likely to be effective. So we argue for the generation of widespread public support to sustain political priorities beyond electoral cycles, creating the space and the demand for business innovation and the promotion of more sustainable lifestyles. So our theory of change is fundamentally rooted in building inclusive social demand. Talk a little about what that looks like in our work in Africa. I can only tell you what we're doing, and I hope it helps. So we have hubs around the world, and we have 3 in Africa. We also have new ones that we hope to be growing in other countries, but we have now in Uganda, Senegal, and South Africa. We're starting new ones in Nigeria, in Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. In each of these places, dialogue processes that we convene are led by local partner work. In Uganda, this is led by a code. And they work with small enterprises, policymakers, civil society organizations, and groups to identify what matters, what is relevant. And in each case, a dialogue process leads to policy change, and new networks of citizen action have arisen. I'll give you an example. In Uganda, in the west of the country, in Western Uganda, around the Ruizi River, businesses, communities, government, civil society organizations have come together for the first time to develop a coherent collective management plan for the catchment management of the River Ruizi. With the Ministry of Environment, we're looking to see if we can use that to also inspire the development of other river catchments in Western Uganda. In Senegal, the issue is different. It's about overfishing of coastal fisheries and the declining of inland agriculture. Here, we're working with groups to work with policy to assure sustainable food supply. In South Africa, big changes are happening with the energy sector. Eskom, the state power supply, is being broken up. And this is creating a new reality across different areas of South Africa. So again, key issue here is small enterprises, and we're looking for ways to go green and to unlock finance for new green business opportunities. So we are looking on the one side to create social demand for economic reform and take that into catalyzing systemic policy change. The two, as I've said, are absolutely critical. We see, therefore, 4 pathways to impact. Building a critical mass of demand. Telling stories that inspire, that give meaning to a much greater sense of an economy beyond GDP. Influencing policy and building a coalition of people, businesses, and government to say, this is our agenda and we will make it happen. So in summary, what I would say, security in Africa is based on inclusive, citizen-led dialogues that empower new social movements that call for green and fair change. The heart of the people. This is our land. We want our country to be better, and we will commit to that. 2, we want to catalyze a shift in expectations and narratives around economic purpose. Change the narrative to a more sustainable green future. 3, we want to empower governments and international organizations and financial institutions to drive systemic change so that environmental and social improvements become central to politics, economic, business decisions. If we do that, our economies are realigned for the benefit of people and are realigned for the benefit of nature. This, I believe, is the basis of security. Just to close, I think we need to think about security issues in the acute and security issues as chronic. Today, as we talk about Ukraine, we're talking about an acute issue. Underlying that is a chronic issue. What we're looking at here at the Green Economy Coalition is building a fundamental resilience which is built on sustainability, where, can I say, we can be chronically well so that we don't get acute system failures arising. Thank you very much indeed for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and we are glad you stayed with us because we were running a bit late, and thanks for your presentation. And as I requested General David, I'm hoping you can stay with us in case there's a question for you, Stuart. But I'll park that and allow us, because we've spoken to issues of the environment, with climate change, issues of water security and food security, and all those compound to something Minister of Finance will speak to us, Uganda's economic security in the context of the evolving global challenges. So I want to invite my colleague, and I've just left his card here. He's here representing the PS. The last time Accord invited him, he did a fantastic job. And I guess the PS, with the recommendation from Martha, must have decided to send Joseph back. So Joseph Enyimu is the Acting Commissioner for Economic Development Policy and Research in the Ministry of Finance. You're welcome, Joseph. You only have 10 minutes, because I'm managing time for the plenary session. There's so many questions. I would want to hear the High Commissioner say something. Professor Kwesiga is probably burning to contribute, so please come, Joseph. I'll borrow some of your time for the others.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, the Ambassador and the High Commissioners, Executive Director Accord, our Chief Speaker, and distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting the Ministry to be part of this dialogue, and the apologies from PSST is held up with a number of competing commitments. To be able to fit within the time we have, I'll keep this submission very simple and break it down into 4 elements. From an economic management perspective, we are watching for a number of unfolding global developments. And the first of this is one which has been with us for a long while, and that is, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact. We are seeing particularly 2 impacts at the moment, and that is on the global supply chains. You are aware that currently there is a global shortage of shipping containers because of the resurgence of demand as economies open up. Also, as economies get back to full-scale production, we are seeing a surge in commodity demands, and that is also driving prices up. The other main item we are watching is also related to climate change, the harsh weather in Europe, and parts of the USA that are driving demand for heating, energy for heating. And then, of course, the latest developments in terms of the military conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And low on the radar is, of course, migration, some of it triggered by this military conflict, but even prior to that, you know that Uganda is home to over 1.4 million refugees. But the dynamic across the continent and a globe is causing this to become a major issue to watch for. And when you put these developments together, they have a few transmission mechanisms. Key among them is global inflation. So we are seeing a number of areas being hit by imported inflation, rising prices affecting things like basic prices for soap, cooking oil in Uganda. These are things that matter for ordinary citizens and all of us alike. So the transmission mechanism for that is really the prices, and of course we are managing in terms of the foreign exchange. The shilling has held, it's been very stable compared to other East African currencies, and we hope that we can sustain that stability. The other aspect would be the markets. The developments globally are both a threat to certain existing markets, but they also present an opportunity. You know that many African countries import a lot of food, and with the shortage in terms of grain and cereals associated with the major global suppliers, Russia and Ukraine, there is going to be a shock, but that shock could be an opportunity for substitution, and we think that Uganda could be a good candidate if we can make our adjustments appropriately to fill in that gap. The other transmission mechanism is in terms of financial flows. As global inflation picks up, we are seeing investors withdrawing their investments in capital markets around the world and taking them to, greener pastures, chiefly the US. But also because of the unfolding humanitarian situation, we foresee a reprogramming of development assistance by our traditional partners. They have to deal with problems at home, and already we are seeing some scaling back on their commitments around the continent. We are chiefly working with project finance at the moment, so that is not really hitting home yet. Now, what do these developments and their transmission mechanisms mean for our economic security? We see a number of threats, and the overriding threat is really in terms of macroeconomic stability. This matters not just for the wealthy, but also for the low-income persons, because it bites at the value of their savings. When inflation picks up, it erodes the purchasing power of their low incomes, but whatever savings they have preserved. And of course, that translates into welfare. So that is one of the threats that is being monitored and prudently managed. The other one is we are currently in a phase of strengthening our regional economic integration with a number of non-tariff barriers being scaled down. We are seeing our regional exports picking up. But these global developments could impact on these prospects, and so it's a threat that we are monitoring and deploying public investment accordingly. The other critical area, of course, is fiscal space. On account of COVID and other related developments, we, for example, we suffered a revenue shortfall already in the first 8 months of about 1 trillion shillings. Now, that impacts a range of issues, including service delivery, which matters for all of us. We have experience with different public services, and if we are not able to finance that, it has long-term implications. The fourth threat is in terms of our human capabilities. We noticed that prolonged lockdown, for example, with schools, has cost children, 2 years of education. And that can be a long-term scar. To recover from that, children that have dropped out from school, that is a lot of human capital sacrificed. And so there is need to strategically address that threat and make good on recovering those losses. And then finally, we see a threat in terms of environment and natural resource degradation. We are on record as being the country with the youngest population in the world. And we have done a good job in terms of bringing down mortality in Uganda, but fertility has not come down as fast. So our population is growing fast, and it is putting a lot of pressure on our natural resources. And so the whole idea of environmental governance, managing urban growth, is a threat that we have to keep monitoring, and we are planning accordingly. Finally, what are we doing to mitigate these threats? I'll just highlight some 5 generic points. In terms of the long term, Uganda is focused on delivering socio-economic transformation. And that is essentially moving more of our factors of production to sectors with a higher return on investment. So within the context of the current and upcoming budget, we are looking at diversifying the base of the economy. We are deploying a lot of public investment in bringing to fruition the oil and gas sector. We are also looking at developing the local supply of steel. As a country is developing, construction is a very, very big area. So lowering that cost, because it will affect things like the housing deficit and also the infrastructure gap we are trying to close. And then finally, mobilizing development savings. The development needs that Uganda has, just the taxpayers are not able to finance them, not even our development partners. It is about mobilizing the savings that regular Ugandans have. And that's why there is a big push to really close down on the subsistence economy, but also scale down on the informal sector. Because if we can mobilize these savings and channel them to the investment gaps we have, our development stands a better chance. So that is one way we are addressing that. The other area we are working on mitigating, of course, is on governance and accountability. There are different approaches to this, but from the perspective of the Ministry of Finance, we are taking on the automation of government. We think that by developing very robust IT systems and being able to account and track our decisions and our resources, we can seal off a number of leakages and bring to account those that need to be. The third mitigation area is to do with the demographic dividend. I told you we already have a very young population, and we have to turn this population into a real asset for our development. So making sure that the young people are skilled and their entrepreneurial abilities are supported by diversifying opportunities for them. And to that end, we are looking at how we turn our urban centers into growth engines and not just residential places, but also we are investing heavily on the Human Capital Development Program. It accounts for nearly 25% of our budget as a country because we understand that people are our greatest resource. Finally, we are focusing on maintaining the competitiveness of our economy. And there we are sustaining our infrastructure agenda in order to bring down the cost of production. We are very grateful that when these global developments are happening, we had already front-loaded, for example, investments in energy and transport. It would have been a disaster if we had those gaps in the current situation. So we are very grateful that we had that foresight. And then finally, lowering the cost of capital. As we try to industrialize, you need to be able to deliver long-term financing. Commercial banking, cannot finance our industrialization agenda because it is based on short-term deposits. You need some low-cost, long-term deposits, And so how we mobilize our pension savings and our development finance institutions to respond to this investment agenda is something we are actively working to mitigate those risks. With those done, we think that the economic security situation of the country is within manageable bands, and together we can work to securing livelihoods and jobs and the prosperity of the country. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Joseph. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I have a mic very quickly because I know we have 15 minutes, and Arthur was keen to say we need to get out of here by 5. Not really get out, but have coffee at 5. And so, yes, I'll come to you, the man, don't worry. I have a microphone here for the Honorable, Your Excellencies. I find it difficult to cut off ambassadors, so I'll be listening. I'll try and, over to you.
Thank you. I don't think you will have to cut me short because I'll try to be as fast as possible. Let me first start by thanking the organizers of this dialogue for inviting me, for inviting the High Commission. So, Dr. Arthur Bainom-Gisha, thank you very much. And the Independent, I think Andrew, I will have time to also thank him. This was a very fascinating and interesting dialogue. And my takeaway is, although we've been experiencing armed conflicts in Africa for a long time, but we also, what I have learned from here, there are also other security threats, basically from the socio-economic aspect. And this takes me to thank all the presenters, starting by our guest of honor, Honorable Jim Muhwezi. He gave us a very good perspective of traditional security understanding by giving us telling us we cannot detach colonial history to what's happening now, and but at the same time showing us other socioeconomic threat to security as human rights and others. I also thank my friend Joseph Shevo, whom I've known when I was serving in Israel. I visited the institute many times. Although I'm not I'm an alumni, but I know. I've been there many, many times, be it in Galilee, be it in Hetzliya, and definitely what you said, as you said, I know it. And giving us the perspective of Israel from 1948 and what they have achieved, it's yes, we can do it. I could go into details of my experience, but we don't have time. But he mentioned education. Ben-Gurion, who was the first prime minister, prioritized education. And this is and what you see in Israel today being high tech, innovation, and startup nation, it's all about education. And maybe what I can add of what he said, education which Ben-Gurion introduced is based also on what they call STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that is why today Israel is #1 in terms of per capita in terms of engineers and scientists. So I would encourage our governments to really encourage this transformation of, I'm not saying that we should not learn other subjects, but science, technology, engineering, it's key for development, and we are talking about education as something which can help us to mitigate these security threats. General Muhwezi mentioned something very important. When Joseph mentioned the recycling of water, which is true. When you are in Israel, you see two different pipes. The purple pipes carry water which has been recycled for irrigation, and the blue pipes, they carry potable water. But as you said, they have proved that even that one, recycled, can be good for consumption by human. So, but General Muhoozi mentioned that, do we need to go to recycling because we can harvest even the water we have? And most of the countries, my country, Tanzania, Uganda, the rains we have, if we can harvest the water we have, I'm not discouraging the recycling, but we already have a lot of water which is actually destroying our habitat and our environment. So that was a very good remark. Andrew Mwenda mentioned, he gave us a very good perspective, as usual, of international security. I'm not going to go into details. He said it, he showed us the threats. And Stuart, for me, I learned a lot about green economy, and I didn't really have enough knowledge, but he has given us a very good perspective of what is a green economy. And the colleague from the Ministry of Finance has just given us the current status of finances and situation, economic situation in Uganda, which we really appreciate. So without taking much time, as I have promised.
Thank you.
But at the same time, may I request that after my comments, I want to go because I had a program at 5, and if you allow me, I might be leaving you. Thank you very much.
You have our permission. Thank you, Your Excellency. Ambassador Mlima?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I've been following the discussion with a lot of interest. A lot have been said, and I have only about 4 points. All the conflicts in the world which bring about the problem of national security, or the threats of national security, comes from geopolitics, geoeconomics, national interest, and social transformation and sustainability. So if you put all this in perspective, you realize that if you try to dissect any conflict in the world, it will boil down to this geopolitics, geoeconomics, and national interest. So what needs to be done in terms of social transformation and sustainability, which most of the speakers have been touched about it, and especially the president of Galileo Institute, we need to look into research and development, education, but also another speaker talked about climate change. Those are another threats, climate change and the environment. So if we're really keen to make sure that our planet Earth is safe, and the politics and everything else, we need to look into this element of geoeconomics and geopolitics so that we have a stable and peaceful world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. I'll come to you. I wanted because I'll come last to this table because we have Professor Shivo and this chief guest, Honorable Chamuzi. Then I have Professor Kwesiga. I have the gentleman here, and I'll come to General David. Okay.
Thank you very much,
yes.
Mr. Moderator, sir.
Keep it short, Honorable.
Very brief.
Yes.
And to the point. I would like to thank you, Accord, for this exciting event. It is a rare species in terms of what is happening in Uganda. Major General Muhoozi possibly did not know I was around, but I followed what he said. He said it is important that we promote regional integration so as to enhance the chances of security. But Major General Muhoozi, I want to inform you that it's not enough to talk the way you are talking. Don't promote regional integration by pronouncement only. Promote regional integration through dialogue within the people, the citizens of Uganda. Let them participate in whether on how they want to integrate with the rest of the regions, not by pronouncement, Major General. The world is becoming more and more insecure from day to day, and Africa's response to that challenge is a catastrophe. In Uganda, for example, while we are independent, we still lack the opportunity of governing ourselves properly. There is misrule. Political parties in Uganda, for example, are treated as NGOs, non-government organizations. And yet the Constitution states that we should participate actively in the affairs of the state. As we speak now, there is a total decay in constitutional governance. I'm sorry to speak the way I'm talking. Otherwise, you take note of this, Major General Mwezi, and report appropriately. Lastly,
yes.
One point, lastly, deforestation in Uganda and Africa is a big, big problem. President Museveni signed the Resolution 40 in 1992 under Agenda 21 to protect all existing forest covers. As we speak now, forests in Uganda are in danger, and a part of the danger is developed by government, the reigning government. What are you talking?
Thank you.
Major
Thank you,
General
Honorable.
Mwezi?
All right. General David Mhozi, I want to come to you and the Zoom team, the technical team, if we could have General. General, there was a specific question on radical Islam and terrorism. And, I won't want to go through the countries that are currently facing that, including ourselves, with the most recent attack on our country. How best can Africa deal with radical Islam and the growing threat of terrorism? General, did you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Maurice. Radical Islam, I wouldn't want to craft it that way. I want to be politically correct in terms of language. I would rather call it radicalism in general, and then by extension, terrorism is a global threat, yes, and it needs a global collaborative approach because by the events of this year, speaking about Uganda, you can see we cannot be an island. A threat that emanates from a neighbor can threaten our security, speaking about ADF in particular, but also speaking about the Al-Shabaab, which is in Somalia, but to which we have been a victim in the past, in 2010 in particular. So I think the key is collaboration in many things, including prevention, and that is sharing intelligence. And then, of course, a response to terrorism. Speaking about ADF, I think we decided on taking the word to the source of the problem. In liaison with the Congo government, gladly we were allowed to go there and pursue the ADF from the safe havens of Eastern Congo, where they were organizing training and doing all sorts of things in freedom, unhampered, to threaten the neighborhood, including Uganda. So bottom line, collaboration, collaboration, collaboration in intelligence sharing and in response. Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and we really want to thank you for staying with us. We know you are very busy yourself and our Minister for Security here. We don't take your time here for granted. Want to come to Professor Kwesiga, and then I have Agatha and the gentleman on this part. If you can keep it under a minute, I'll be happy to take all the three of you, but I'll come to Professor Kwesiga, and then the two gentlemen and Agatha. Professor Kwesiga, actually Agatha is next to you, so after you, we'll go to Agatha.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm always fascinated by how Israel defies all odds to develop at the pace it does. I have witnessed it, been there many times. And Dr. Shevel, thanks for being a friend. Visiting Israel leads one to fully appreciate the African developmental paradox, where we have plentiful of everything, but we are still not developing. Again, thanks to all the presenters who are assuring us with the message that it can be done. My comment of my own, to complement what has been said, is overdependence on foreign technology is probably one of the biggest threats to our countries. Just the pandemic showed us how unsettling our situation is. And allocation of resources, I'm glad to hear Minister of Finance talk about their priorities, and indeed, they are good priorities. But how do you emphasize such priorities, but then you take me back to MTEF? We need to reconcile that message with reality. Otherwise, I really commend all the presentations, and I ask those of you who haven't been to Israel, make an effort and go and see for yourselves. The first thing that hit me when I visited there first time was to see how Israel was busy turning a desert into farmland. And then I come back home and I find my country, Kigezi, turning farmland into desert. There's a lot we can learn. And the few, those who have admired what I have tried to accomplish, I benchmark against the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Agatha is right next to you. And if you can, and I'm really encouraging those who are here, if you can, to visit the Uganda Industrial Research Institute. I think what Professor and the team are doing there is a great job. If you can read up on it on the internet, or even see what they've done on the different stories that have profiled Yuri. Agatha?
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, our chief guest and the keynote speaker, and the rest of the people that have contributed. I'll keep mine to just 3 points, and I will summarize them. And
in 1 minute, right?
And I'm glad we are talking about security in broad terms, not the security we have been told about that the NRM brought of absence of war and people can sleep. Security of food and people being able to go to school and accessing healthcare is important. And for me, it's a form of a question about the 3 points to Honorable Minister and General David Mohozi, if he's still on. We are glad to have them here. That the issues we grapple with, agriculture contributes immensely to this economy. We have had our keynote speaker mention how agriculture has been transformed in the country. In Uganda, over 70% is still in subsistence farming, and we're still using rudimentary tools. It must be the 2016 elections when they were giving out hoes in this era and age that people can't even afford a hoe. So that now, we already get a lot of benefits from it without investing in it. Honorable Minister, why isn't government actually investing in agriculture? General David Mohozi called it sloganeering. I am glad he's the one that said it, not us on this other side. We have invested in Operation Wealth Creation, in NADS, in NARO. What is the problem? The second and third are education and health. I did a research in both 3 months ago. And you go out there and you find the situation worse than you left it. Than you actually imagined. Teacher-pupil ratio in some schools where I went was 100, 1 to 100. Then you have pupils that have no classes. I went to a hospital where
that are richest are those who have data. not land. Land is not important anymore. Even capital is less important. The richest companies, the richest countries, everything is data. And this is why Professor Kwesiga and I, we yesterday talked about educating 3,000 students on online that I mentioned already, and we are going to do it together with Yuri and Galilee together. I hope to do it now. Last comment is about Andrew, who is not here. He mentioned like the US and the Russia are pretty much the same. No, he probably forgot that the GDP of the US is $24 trillion, and how much is Russia? 4 trillion, that's all. 24 and 4, how can you compare? Even China is only 14, but 24 and 4, you cannot compare. These are not competitive. These are not competitive. And lastly, he mentioned Barbara Tuchman and her book. There was another book by Kahan. Kahan was a strategic expert, and he wrote a book, Think the Unthinkable. What today we think is unthinkable, that Putin might use nuclear weapon, as he said. So that's the book, Think the Unthinkable. We have to take into consideration it might happen, who knows? These were my remarks.
Thank you very much. Our chief guest, this is your time.
Thank you very
You will
much.
dictate your own time. For us, we will listen.
Yes, I will not take a long time because I'm also late for another meeting, and I had tried to stay around as I had been requested. Because of time, I'm not going to say much on what I wanted to say, but say thank you to all of you for your contributions. Apart from the questions, all your presentations were fantastic, and I agree with them. The broad interpretation of security, that's how it is, that's how we interpret it these days. It's no longer the absence of war. It is looking at all these aspects of life, as I said in my opening remarks. So, unfortunately, the questions are a bit local. They are Ugandan questions. My old friend Richams has not changed. I thought after so many years he had grown older and changed. We were together in Parliament, but he's still the same. He's asking that how can we talk about regional integration when we are not allowing people to decide how they want to be integrated? This is a local issue here. That's what he's talking about, federal. He's talking about federal. But we are talking about integration as a strategic method for our security. And this answers some other question which someone asked us. Uganda or Tanzania or any other country alone cannot plan for strategic security. People are talking about not being secure on land, sea, air, but they are talking about space also. And no country in Africa can invest in space. We don't have the money. But if we integrated, we can have the capacity also to have space security. That's what we are talking about. I was talking about integration for strategic reasons. I was talking about center of gravity and things like that. And federal cannot help us in this aspect. So that answers you, Honorable Chams. Deforestation, environment, protection of environment. I had wanted to talk about it also to make a comment that the problem with the environment is survival. Our people are looking for food. So when we are trying to protect the environment, we must balance it up with people living. Yet, the instability in other regions also affect us. Interference in our internal affairs affects us. We have a history, which I talked about, which is colonial. We are doing our best to put our house in order, but people are telling us run. Not only run, but run fast, even when they took years to get, stable. Refugees, he mentioned it, that we have now, Uganda is hosting 1.4 million of our comrades, our African friends, whom we must host. Definitely where they are in that area, people can't be stable, can't keep the environment even. We are on that survival. So that's why. Now, yes, I agree with the, Professor Kwesiga over dependence on foreign technologies and so on. Yes, Agatha, my young sister there, or my daughter, I've seen her on television, now I've seen her face to face. And she has not changed so also. Yes, she's saying she's talking about security, not the absence of war. She's talking about subsistence. Subsistence now is at 39%. People who are living at on subsistence farm production. Yes, you are asking why are we not investing in agriculture, and the answer is yes, we are. We are moving in the right direction. If you have been following, and if you talk to my brother here from Ministry of Finance, he can explain to you about the parish development model, where we are taking the government programs to the parish, We have, how many parishes have we got? Over 70,000? 10,594. That's where we are taking development. We don't want to pass it through ministries, through districts, through sub-counties. We want to take the money right to the parish and cause production there, targeting the 39%, 39 people who are still living under subsistence production. So we are taking steps. Education. Our keynote speaker was talking about education, and the High Commissioner talked about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's where we are going. We have already emphasized science, teaching of science in Uganda. We have increased salaries of all scientists coming in the next budget. All scientists will be getting not less than 4 million shillings per month. That is going to be attractive. It's going to encourage people to study sciences. It's going to bring back Ugandans who have been going away. Agatha, you know that when we came, our economy, our tax collection was 5 billion. What are we talking about? How many trillions now? 18 trillion from 5 billion. Education, I was the Minister for Primary Education in 1997. We had only 1.7 million people in primary schools. When we introduced universal primary education, we got 7 million. Over 5 million we are not accessing school because they could not afford. So these are developments in the right direction. We cannot jump. We have to move slowly because of our own conditions. But we are moving in the right direction. And given a chance, with non-interference, as I said, in our matters, stabilizing the country, because we have a democracy. Honorable Chamuzi We allow people to decide how they need to be governed and how they need to be integrated through democracy. There is no shortcut. Yes, we have democracy. People are deciding who should lead them, how they should be governed, and how they should integrate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our chief guest, and it's indeed an honor that you stayed with us. It's very unusual, and we want to thank you. I want Arthur very quickly to say thank you to the participants and the chief guest. I think he also has a small token for you, our chief guest, for coming and being part of this conversation. Arthur.
I think he has been excellent. And a round of applause to ourselves for being very active participants. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Minister for Security, who was our chief guest. Give him a round of applause. And he had to leave he had to run through the engagement and come and be with us. I want also to thank the Minister of State for Internal Affairs, General David Muhoozi, who discussed the keynote address. A round of applause to the General. I want to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Joseph Shevo, for steering the debate and taking us to the global stage and sharing the Israeli experience. What he didn't tell you is that Israel was supposed to be in Karamoja, but they failed to pronounce Karamoja. He said, Canaan. Then they went to Canaan. Otherwise, they would be fighting them here in Karamoja. But thank God they ended up in the Canaan and not Karamoja. He told me the story, so there's no diplomatic role on that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to put our hands together and thank all the panelists for discussing this very, very, very well. Extremely thankful to and pass on our regards to the Permanent Secretary, but also to yourself for discussing economic security in a very, very, very short time. Because you see, as I said, security is holistic. Because after 1945, after the Second World War, the whole concept of security was broadened to include human security away from state security. And so we now talk about economic security, water security, management security, everything is security. But in all those, it is the citizen, it's the individual, it is the citizens that are very important and central. So whatever we do, it is the citizen, the security of the people. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of our code, I want to thank you and to inform you that we have kickstarted, we have reignited our usual policy dialogues. They should be very brief, 2 hours. 2 hours, because to get a minister for security who is very busy and put him here for a long time, you can't. But if we make them very brief, but also very focused. Honorable Minister, today we looked at holistic global security situation, but we'll be having a lot of several forums, but now focusing on different aspects of security so that we can inform policy making at the national level, at the regional level, at continental level, and at the global stage. And what comes out of this, ladies and gentlemen, is that we want to situate Africa not to be a bystander in the global or international affairs, but to be an active participant. And I like the discussion that came here, that this is an opportunity to take advantage when the giants are fighting, to actually equip ourselves and occupy our space. When they come to sit on the chair that they had vacated, we'll say, no, we are already seated. So Africa must take a firm seat on the high table and international affairs. And I want to thank the gentleman, the young lady, I didn't teach you peace studies, I'm a lecturer of peace studies, who said, he made something important, that Africa now actually can help end this war. Because war is bad. By all definition, war is bad. It is destructive. And all efforts must be marshaled to end the war. It is bad. And so now that Africa, especially Uganda, voted to abstain, we have an advantage actually to bring the inconvenient truth or to bring sanity in the international community. So, Honorable Jim Muhoozi, and I'm glad that you saw the ambassadors. You see, that the East African spirit has been reignited. I'm also glad that we have also warmed up to Rwanda. If you know what happened to the people of Chigezi and Chisoro, because of this standoff between Uganda and Rwanda, it was an economic disaster. Lives were lost, but I'm glad it has warmed up, the border has opened. We still need to do some other things, I think that's to complete, because our survival as African people, and you also brought it very well, it's not the full-scale African state, it is the gradualism. It is through regional economic integration and other. Then if we can become an African state, but for now, really, East African community, ECOWAS, ECASA, SADC, IGAD is the way to go. And then with a big voice, then we can actually negotiate in the international stage. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you and promise that we are going to synthesize the discussions here and recommendations, which we'll share with you. I hope you registered. We'll share them out to you and we'll bring them to governments so that they can actually continue to think and prepare so that Africa doesn't disappear in this very complex world. Go back to Israel, take our regards to Israel. I'm a friend to Israel because I'm Christian. And the Bible says, I will curse those who curse you, I will bless those who bless you. So I decided to bless Israel so that I can be blessed. So I'm a friend actually to Israel, and he's my friend. So thank you very much. I have some few gifts that I want to pass on.
Okay. The Jen and the team photos, we want to officially hand some books to both our chief guest and professor. Chief guest, you want to come in front since you're not going to sit again, chief guest? Those are yours? Dr. Shivo? Yes, Arthur wrote a note for you. They're autobiographed by himself. Huh? That is his book, actually, he authored. Yes. All right. Adijan. Thank you. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. So, Agatha, I think the minister says, yes, you need to walk together and conclude this.